Hello, it is podcast time, everyone. Sam and I are going to do what Sam and I do, which is whatever we do. It's been a crazy week. I hope you guys got a chance to check out the Compass podcast that I'm producing for those guys. It's pretty fun. It's pretty cool. It's certainly a little bit smarter than we are. But anyway, CompassKnox.com is their website, but on YouTube or whatever podcast you're listening to this on, just search Compass Points and you'll find the Compass Points with Jesse and Scott. Check them out. They're, like I said, they're well-seasoned journalists doing well-seasoned and knowledgeable things. But we're almost in agreement, almostinagreement.com. Go to our website, almostinagreement.com. Our email's almostinagreement@gmail.com. Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to our... I'm all out of order. Early voting has begun. And... so if you're getting out to early vote, I've got a public service announcement on that as well. So anyway, Sam and I are going to do what Sam and I do, and, that's that. So here we go. What up, Simon Lama?
Wasabi.
Wasabi indeed. So early voting started this week. And in my standard fashion, I've changed my mind on something that I thought I was sure of. 2 years ago, we started this.
What?
When we were in the Eddie Menace, Gina Oster mess, and we talked to Randy and some other people, that the state party has been trying to, maybe not trying to per se, but has expressed interest in trying to get the state law changed so that primaries are closed primaries like other states. And at the time I was like, no, I want to vote for everything I can vote for, blah, 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 blah. And I still do want to vote for everything. I'm picking up a Republican primary this year. The legalities of that statement, I'm not sure about. If someone does want to challenge my ability, my bona fides, to take a Republican primary here when I go get mine, which I may do in early voting. I may do a day of. I also read an article about somebody who's like, why you should use early voting and not this romanticism of voting on election day is bullshit and you're wasting time and making the election commission work harder.
Typically when you go in for early voting, there's a lot less of a line.
Yeah,
so but you are saving yourself time.
Well, why are you going to demonize me for enjoying the idea, like just kind of the romanticization of voting on election day because it makes the election workers' job harder? It's like, I don't know. Anyway, that's not the point. Yeah. I want them to close the primaries, and I guarantee this is how it plays out because the Democrats want it too. They won't say it out loud because they don't have to say it out loud. The Democrats can be like, no, don't do that. That's terrible. Look at these evil Republicans, and they're trying to close off your access to voting and stuff like that, which really they want it too. But since they know their voting opinion doesn't matter, they can vocally say against it, vocally vote against it, but the thing still goes through, and it's good for the party. It's good for both parties. Because I think the more I'm thinking about it, the more I think having this open primary it's a scam to make us think that we matter. That's what it feels like to me. It's like if the party gets to pick anyway, and it's a crime to pull a primary if you're not part of the party and you don't have some sworn allegiance and or bona fides to prove it, that they want to scare Democrats or unaffiliated voters from doing that because I don't want a Class C misdemeanor on my record. I already got a long enough record. Right. Don't need it any longer than it already is. I don't need a fine or whatever the actual penalty for said misdemeanor is. I don't want that in my life. So don't take a primary at all is what they're saying to me. And all the Democrats out there, especially if you're anywhere but District 1 in county, they're saying you don't get to pick sheriff for sure. Any Democrats in the county don't get to pick sheriff and be okay with that. And I was talking to Matt Shears about it. He's like, it's my fault I didn't get us more candidates. So I was like, well, if they close the primary, maybe you get more candidates. Maybe you'd actually pull candidates because more people would realize that they don't have a fucking choice here. They're getting handed whatever the Republicans are handing them, sheriff-wise particularly, with the way they're doing this. And so they need to close the fucking primaries or go a step further and go to a convention where they have a convention and a meeting of delegates, and the delegates tell us who the winner is. So no primary where me and you take part in it, but just straight up they hang out at the Hilton banquet room, and they do some weird little song and dance where they vote at the end of it, and whoever they vote for will run for X seat under the Democratic title. And that's fine with me. Do it that way. Because make it clear to me, especially the independent voter, that I don't fucking matter. Make it 100% clear that I don't fucking matter. And then maybe we'll have some people that actually, step up and say this is bullshit and try to do something about it instead of this little half-ass game they're playing right now. Because I was reading Todd's thing, Todd Frohmeyer, I put a post on our Facebook page about it, and Frohmeyer gave me this big 25-page essay on why, if you're a Democrat, you should pull a Democratic primary. And it's like, I agree. You're right, Todd. If you're a Democrat in Hamilton County that's never had Democrats do anything ever in the last 50 years or whatever it is, I could see how there's a positive effect for, even though it doesn't matter because there's no Democratic primaries in Hamilton County this year. But when Democrats go up and pick up that Democratic primary, it shows numbers, which is going to force the local GOP to adjust because it's like, oh shit, there are actual Democrats here, and we need to do something about this. We need to pay better attention. We need to maybe shift our tactics from the super far right to maybe bring it back a little bit. Like, it's going to elicit a response, which it has, because the county chair up there has wrote an op-ed or something about it, basically saying, hey, we got to pay attention because these Democrats are actually coming to get serious and play. So it's like, okay, if you're a Democrat, great. What if you're not? What if you're me and you're not either party? What if you're like, I want to say I heard a stat that it was approaching or maybe even past 50% of Americans are considering themselves independent voters. Now, whether they're technically affiliated because of the state they live in and the rules that play for registration or whatever, but if you just ask them on the street, they'll say they're more an independent-minded voter. Now, there could be a couple different things with that survey that's a problem. Because you say you're an independent voter to avoid any flack from the surroundings that you're in. Because the person who is doing the survey, as the person who's being surveyed, you're like, well, I don't know who you are, and I don't know if you're some far right-wing person, and if I say I'm a Democrat, you're going to yell at me, or if I say I'm a Republican, you're going to yell at me. So I'm just going to say independent. So that could be part of that survey.
I like everybody.
Right. I don't like anybody. I don't know, either one, whatever it is.
Don't try to pin me down. So
I think there's like a social aspect that could skew that number a little bit, but I think realistically, because then I got in a fight with somebody else because they were like, I think she said, this year I'm going to hold my nose and pull a Republican primary, which I made the joke of, that's illegal. You can't do that, but you should. I didn't say should because that would be me encouraging lawlessness, which would also be illegal. So I can't remember what my quote was, but I basically said, why don't hold your nose. This is the shit that you've been given. Go play the game. And something about, the Republicans are irreparably, I don't know what the word was, evil or something like that. And I said, change that last sentence to both parties are irreparably evil, and I'm 100% on board with what you're talking about. And she's like, you've been living under a rock. The Republicans, the worst thing ever.
Irreparably?
I don't know. I could pull it up so you could read the word for me, because I maybe should have checked the meaning of the word before I responded to it, because, maybe I did say something stupid.
It means there's no going back. There's no kind of recourse for
it. Right. They're beyond. That's what I took it as beyond repair.
Irreparable.
Oh, I had more. I've missed a bunch more responses on this. Sorry, guys. Is this one? Yeah, the 2 at-large commission seats are the reason I hold my nose and vote in Republican primary this year. Said, don't hold your nose. The Knox Dems failed to get you enough candidates to have a useful primary. Take that R and proudly pick who you prefer. It's who's going to win anyway. So your vote matters. Use it how you want. And she says, of course, in most cases, I'll vote for the D in the general, and I don't have to hold my nose for the R's I vote for, or I wouldn't vote for them. I don't know what that. Anyway, because I feel like I need a shower just talking about voting for R's, because the party is there's the word irretrievably evil. Okay, the party's irretrievably evil. And I said, oof, change that last sentence to the parties, not just Republicans. And I'm 100% on board. The entrenchment of the 2-party system is how we get to this place where we feel we need to align with one or the other, do whatever, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, moral of the story is this primary process is bullshit, and it's not for me and you. And I don't mean me and you as independent voters. I don't mean me and you as Democrat independent voter, or me and you that if Max was here, we'd have Republican Democrat independent voter. It's for none of us. It doesn't do us any good. It doesn't give us better choices of candidates. The primary system as it stands only encourages the further wing part of the parties. Because to win a primary, well, maybe since it's open, it changes that a little bit now that I'm thinking about it. But to win a primary, you need to be the more Republican, and the current rule to be more Republican is to be the more extreme right. That's why we have Steve Weiner and Gina Oster and all those. I'm the real Republican here. Driscoll's the real Republican. Frazier's the moderate Republican. And so the primary pitch is that I'm the real Republican. They're a centrist, which means they're closer to the other team, and the other team is evil. And so that's going to force the primaries. The primary candidates are going to have to push right to win that base so that they can go on to the general, and then everybody who's remotely right is stuck with them. Where for me, like Larson right now, Larson is getting a mountain of shit for being... What is it, leftist Larson? I can't remember. There's a website that somebody put up giving him shit. Have you seen it? No. Larson the Lefty or something like that.com. Anyway, it's basically Larson donated campaign, did a campaign donation to Obama. He's a liberal Larson. That's what it is. LiberalLarson.com. Check it out. Don't do it. I don't know. But LiberalLarson.com is, he says he's a Republican. He has an R next to his name on the ballot, but he's really not. And so the whole pitch in that campaign is Steve Weiner is the real Republican, and Steve Weiner is the much further right person. So the more centrist Republican is not suitable for the primary. Now, me and you as the public citizen and whatever, he might be more suitable for us as a whole. He might be more amenable as an actual middle ground between you, Democrat, and Max Republican, that he could actually be, what's the word the government's supposed to do? They say it all the time. Compromise. He's actually probably more of a compromise candidate between the left and right. He's a middle ground person that's going to address you and the others and blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But since he has to primary, he's getting reamed for that premise. And how does that help us? Because, again, I know it annoys the shit out of you, but that's how I do it. It's how do these systems help me and you, the citizen? Like, I ask this question to you all the time, and you always give me that fuck you look, which I deserve. But like that's to me where this comes down to. That's the simplification of the process to me. How do doing the primaries like this help me and you, the voter, the regular person, not the party affiliated, whatever, but help us? Does it get us better candidates?
It can and can. I mean, it all depends on how you want to use that system. I mean, as far as
hold on, I get it.
Okay.
Well, I'm saying how you want to use that system. What do you mean? That's all I wanted to ask.
The system that you have in place that you're pushing back against.
So, but when you say you, do you mean me as in me, the voter?
The plural you.
Yeah. Or you as in you, the system being worked by whoever's working the system? Like how the party...
You as in the voters.
You as in the voters.
Wait. How did I use it again?
You said, depends how you use it. And I don't know if you meant like how I use it by pulling a Republican primary because I can.
Oh, okay. Yes. Or as far as like the party's using it. As far as they are using it.
Right. But I mean, what's the track record here? Is the track record here that they're using it to the benefit of the public, or they're using it to the benefit of themselves?
I'd say more often than not, probably to the benefit of themselves.
Okay.
I mean, they are in the job to protect and promote themselves.
That is what that is what they do.
Party,
yes.
The capital P party.
Right. Wants to survive. Wants to grow. Wants more power.
I mean, their goal is to forward their candidates.
Right. Which is to consolidate their power and have more and be able to do more of what they want with less pushback.
And then not necessarily less pushback.
Sure. That's why they hated Manus. Because he had the badge but didn't play the game. He didn't do what he was told. He didn't vote the party line. And so if you have, Tennessee, essentially, it's, if the party wants it, it happens. Now, the party has a little bit of a complicated game on, what do they call it, like optics and...
Sure, there's many things that the party has wanted that hasn't come to fruition.
But I don't think
there's no guarantee that they want something, it will happen.
I mean, it has to be legal, but I think there's the only thing that stops them is optics and potential political problems in the future. It's not that they do or don't want or can and can't have. It's that we could do this. They could close the primaries. They could have closed primaries years ago. The state party's been wanting to do it for a while. But how does that look? What is the optics for the public?
I'd be curious to go back and see what the reasoning was for not doing it.
For not doing it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know how long it's been in place.
Yeah, I know that's a good question. Chris Davis shunned me and took a Compass interview instead. That son of a bitch. He wouldn't give up like 2 hours of his day on the first day of early voting for me, but he gave up like 30 minutes for those fuckers. Right. But I mean, it's the history would be interesting to follow. But I mean, does the history change?
I mean, that's where you're going to find some of the answers to your question as to why we did it.
Okay, but regardless of why, does that change what we are now? Just because it came from a certain place?
It gives us more perspective.
Okay,
which gives you more insight to a better answer instead of jumping to conclusions and just assuming that this is the way it's been because of A, B, and C.
But it still doesn't. Okay, I agree with you in the holistic approach in trying to understand a topic. But at the end of the day, I don't care how we got here. This is where we are.
It only matters how you feel about it.
No,
how it makes you feel.
No, this is where we are.
Well, I mean, you seem like you figured it out.
This is where we are, and this is the system that we live with, and how it got here is interesting and it's important, but it doesn't change. I don't think it changes how I would feel about it. Why would it change how I feel about what I've been pissed off about for all shows so far? Just because it happened because it was this, that, and the other, and that's a great reason to do it. I don't think that because it was a good reason then doesn't apply now.
I still feel that your anger is coming out of your perception of it.
I suppose because
I know you've delved into it to a certain extent, but
because I don't have one of two acceptable outlooks upon it. That is where my anger comes from. Yes, my perception not being one of the two allowed perceptions to have is one of the reasons why I'm angry. But really, if I had one of the two acceptable outlooks, I should be angry as well. If you're a Democrat in Knox County, you should be angry right now. I don't know how you wouldn't be. That this is what you get. Now, Matt makes a good point of, well, then fucking run. Don't sit here pissed off and because nobody's running, and then you won't and you won't run either. Well, right. You run for the seat.
I keep seeing it occasionally, but the percentage of seats across the U.S. that just are unopposed.
Right.
I mean, we had at least a few in one of the last elections.
Because I mean, I don't know, and again, I think that's one of the problems. And again, the history of how we got here could be very interesting and stuff like that, but it doesn't change where we are. Where we are in what kind of person do you have to be to want this job? To go through the bullshit that it takes to get the job. And then go do the job to the best of your abilities. Like, what kind of person does that take? The good version, the happy version, would be a really dedicated communal servant, wants to do the best they can for their neighborhood and their friends and their family and their section of the state, if we're talking state legislature, or if it's county commission. I want to do this because I want to make a difference here in Knox County. I want to see Knox County grow. And I want to see it grow in a positive way for the most people possible, or something like that. That's the generous take.
Right.
Do you think that's the reality for most people, especially at state level?
A majority, no.
What do you think their core motivating factor is? Actually, I'd say it's the same. My guess would be it's the same for local, too. Biggs being the best example. Biggs got into commission as step one of 5 to 10 step process to get to maybe a mayor, or because I don't think he's going to take a step backwards in income. He went from commission and he's now going to run for trustee. If he gets his trustee position, maybe he'll run to replace Jacobs after Jacobs terms out. That's what that looks like to me. Because there's no point in him running for a state legislature seat, because that goes back to commission pay, and he's going to get a 20-fold raise here if he wins this trustee seat.
Right.
I think that's one. Get into the top levels of it, because whatever reason you want to get into the top levels of it, and income being a bonus, but maybe not the key factor. Maybe he'll go into federal. Maybe he'll run and try to take, I don't know where he lives in town, but maybe he'll try to look for a District 90 or, I don't know, 89? No. What's Max's neighborhood? Do you remember? 17? Carringer seat? Maybe he'll run for Carringer seat, or he'll run for Dr. Briggs. Biggs replaces Briggs.
think there's a Hurt in that's Halls, I think.
Yeah. Well, that would be Max's different. Anyway, somewhere up there. Anyway, Briggs to me reads as Biggs to me reads as this is a career for him, and that's one method of it.
There's definitely some that go in there with that specific intent that they've got to work their way up, essentially.
Right. I think right. So anyway, well, the original question was, what kind of person? What is the motivator for a person to seek some of these seats? You know, we gave the generous one, the one that we're hopeful would be the majority of people, but we agreed that that's probably less than likely. So if what we consider the proper motivation for the job is the less likely one, what are the more likely ones?
It may be I think there's some that kind of have that mixture of trying to help their neighborhood, but also trying to help their neighborhood and the way they want their area to be.
So their neighborhood.
So it's a little bit of selfish and
being themselves, right?
Right. Where they've seen frustrations going on in their district. And they're like, hey, getting tired of this. Like, hey, I'm gonna see what I can do to help fix things, to make things better, and how I see the neighborhood being better.
Right. Okay. Because this transitions into, you sent that article from, what was it? Reuters. AP article headline. This is by Susan Haigh. How would you say that? Haigh? Haigh. Some state lawmakers calling it quits because they can't afford to serve. So I've had this conversation with a few people. Dylan Early, when he was in here, was talking about making county commission a full-time job because it's a $17,000 or so a year job. And the state legislature is about the same. It's less than 20, or it's right at 20. I don't remember what state legislators get paid, but it's low. The article was New Jersey was 30 and Oregon was 33.
Yeah, it's talking about some of the D.C. ones. They get their pay, and then I don't think they gave an amount, but they get a stipend, I guess, for housing while Congress is in session. But
these are state reps, not. The way this reads to me is that this is state lawmakers, so this would be a Massey, not a Blackbird.
I thought I mentioned some federal, but
because federal,
maybe they were just talking about Washington State.
I think a senator is like $250,000 a year.
So I think it was somebody we had on that was talking about how much money they get, just as far as driving back and forth.
Right, and I know they get like a stipend or something for an apartment in Nashville when they're in Nashville, and maybe like a per diem for food and stuff while they're in Nashville.
Maybe that's what it was reading about.
But still, comparatively to you own a home here, you have a job here, you have to vacate that job during session for 3 or 4 days a week, 2.5 hour, 3 hour drive there, 3 or 4 days there, 2.5, 3 hour drive back, and you have very little, time to do anything other than it.
Right.
Like, I understand, but I was thinking about it as I was reading this. It's like, well, again, on the state level, and this goes back to a conversation we've had a couple of times now. Is it supposed to be that much of a job? Like, should they be doing that much? I complain about 1,000 bills a year. Well, if you're making more work for yourself and then complaining that you don't get paid enough to take the full-time job, it's like, well, do we need to be making all that work? I guess that's the question I'm trying to get to. Like, should the job include... Like, because the statement in the article is like it's a part-time citizen. What do they call it?
I think I only made it like 2/3 of the way through before I sent it to you.
Yeah, they call it like a citizen rep. All right. So lawmakers in other states, often those with part-time citizen legislatures, which is what Tennessee is. But it's talking about in Oregon where it's $33,000, which is almost twice as much as they get paid here.
Yeah.
But one, isn't the point supposed to be a citizen legislature? Isn't it supposed to be we the people,
right?
By the people, for the people kind of thing? That's part one. But part two, I don't know. We'd have to read the state constitution on it. But is the job supposed to have that much stuff going on? Should there be 1,000 bills a year that you have to squeeze into this 4-month period, 4 days a week for the first third of the year?
I mean, I'd argue most of those bills are bills that have been asked about by the constituents to have their lawmaker put this through, or at least
but
taking at bat for them.
Right. I follow the logic on
this
it.
bill matters to me.
But again, it goes to the idea of like this. I make the joke about how complicated everything is, and those that understand how to play the game have no want or desire to simplify the game for the rest of us to see it, because then they're more visible, and what they do matters, or what they do is more attributable to them, and then therefore we can hold them to account better because it's easier to understand it. It's the same thing. Like a lot of these things that are necessary bills, extending the timeline, changing this, changing that, and stuff like that, is a consequence of a 200-plus-year-old state that has 200 years of bills piled on. I'm assuming they wrote the Constitution in a way that when you had to horse and buggy it from Knoxville to Nashville, that it was a serious venture to get here, or to get to Nashville, do some hard work for a couple weeks, and then go home. So I'm assuming the idea is that this is not supposed to be a big, complicated body that does a lot of big, complicated things. But we've made it so over the time, and then now we're complaining about the job's too hard, too time-consuming. I think that's kind of cruddy. I think it's like, well, simplify the job. Do less stuff. Why do you have to do all this stuff? Let's figure out a way to make less stuff. Why do we need more laws in the state of Tennessee? What more new laws do we really need that have to be state level laws?
So you think we should pass more local laws?
I mean, that would be part A. If some constituency group in Memphis wants a thing, why can't Memphis Shelby County deal with that? Why does Knox County have to be a part of that conversation? Who cares? Let them have the thing that they're asking for.
Depending on if there's state funding, it has to go through the state legislature.
Okay, I think that's part B of it too, and I don't know the history of this. I think number 1A, that's one of the biggest problems we have, is that the majority of our taxes, period, start at the top and work their way down. That's backwards as fuck to me. City of Knoxville should collect and spend more tax dollars than Knox County, the state of Tennessee, and the federal government. Not total numbers, but as a percentage of the population. Like if you as a city resident pay $100 total in taxes and all the combined things, $80 of that should be the city of Knoxville, 10 to Knox County, 6 to the state of Tennessee, whatever, 4 to whatever left over to the federal government. This is so backwards that we pay more money to the federal government so that they can buy warplanes and stipends and subsidize a different war in Yemen that nobody talks about, and give missiles or sell missiles. I don't know whatever the fuck they're doing with Ukraine right now. That we pay more money to that in our day-to-day life than we do to anything else. Doesn't make sense to me. And so the work should be reflective as well. So the locals, like I think a mayor and a city council, that should be a full-time job. And the Marsha Blackburns should be the part-time job. It doesn't make sense to me the way I think we're upside down in the way we subdivide our government, I guess is the point. Excuse me.
I mean, how much on a day-to-day basis are you paying in federal taxes?
In 2021, my total to the IRS taxes due is somewhere in the $20,000+ range. So, I don't know what
that's yearly filings,
right? My annual, I'm paying $20,000 ish to the federal government for last year's taxes. In that same time period, do you think I paid $10,000 in sales tax? I spent $100,000 over the year.
No.
Okay, so that would mean if
fuel tax.
If I spent $100,000 just on stuff for the year, and then therefore $10,000, that's half. But I don't think I spent that. Now, sure, there's other little taxes other places, state level. But even on that, I mean, it's simple. I mean, it's simple as day in our sales tax formula anyway. We have a 9.25% sales tax. 7 of it goes to the state. So if I made $100,000, 20 goes to the federal government. I spend the $80,000 I have left. 8 goes into sales tax. 6 and some change of that goes to the state. 1.75, 2,000 goes to Knox County. That's how it breaks down. So local sales, I paid $2,000. State sales, I paid $8,000. Federal, $20,000. That is fucking ridiculous.
That's directly coming from you going back into the state. But I think we've talked about before how basically the state takes that and then redistributes it back to the city.
Okay, but the state gets to make the decision on how the city gets to spend that money. Why doesn't the city just get that money directly and we can go to the city and be like, hey, the city, this is what we want, because it's ours. Instead of going, here, state, you take our money and then tell us how we're allowed to spend our money in our community, and instead of us just putting money into our community and letting our community decide how to spend our money.
How much say do they have over the funds that are given back to the city by the state?
They don't. What funds are you talking about? Like
the tax funds that are reallocated back to the city or the county.
They don't give anything back unless it's a grant. Like, okay, technically, the state collects all sales tax, right?
Right. So we talked about this before.
Right.
It all goes back to the state, and then
right. But of the 9.25, 7% of that is state money. So you pay all 9.25 to the state. 7% stays in the state treasury. The 2.25 either comes back to county or city. If you're city, it comes back to 2.25, and then 60% of that goes to the county for schools. But there's no other than a baseball stadium project. I'm sorry, multi-use stadium project where we ask the state for some money back, or that same project we say, hey, taxes collected here, we're going to go to pay this thing instead of it going to you, which takes that other 7% that would go to the state otherwise and keeps it local. But outside of that, yes, the state paves a highway with the money they collect from us, and that highway might be here, might be not. Okay, I get it. But why? Why does the state need more funds than the county does? Hell, the county pays more for the schools than the state does. So why take that money to the state in the first place? Fuck off, state. Just let our money stay here. Or let's give you the 2.5%, and then you can do the little shit that matters to everybody, but it's the little shit that we all share, and let us take care of our own big shit. Instead of giving it to you, and then you give us half of it back in state school funding. But not half of it, half of what we ask for it back. Anyway, weird formula bullshit.
So I don't think that would work that well in smaller communities, towns that are 5,000, 10,000 people.
Okay.
How much tax revenue are they putting up to where when they need to repave a road, and they're like, it's going to be 5 years before we have enough money to repave a road?
I mean, I don't know how it works. I'd love to talk to an engineer about how it works. I would absolutely understand that a road is going to get wear and tear.
I mean, if in your scenario where the city or county is then more primarily funding that. I
would assume that if you have a smaller community that has less traffic, a road is going to last longer. I would assume. It's going to have less wear and tear over time. You're going to have to spend less maintenance regularly on it to keep it up because you don't have as much wear and tear on it over time. Yeah, if you just leave it out there in the sun, it's going to die eventually. I get it. But, yeah, I mean, you build less roads because you have less people that need roads. You shouldn't be building a bunch of roads in a small community. Now, maybe you're trying to put in a growth pattern and stuff like that, and you have to borrow money or something like that. I don't know. There's ways to do it. But it's the same animal. So you're some small community that doesn't have great tax revenue. You have to go beg, borrow, and steal from the state to get the money to build your road anyway. That same process of beg, borrowing, and stealing you could do from other ways. You could pitch it to a neighboring bigger county that has more funds. Be like, hey, can we borrow a couple $1,000,000?
So now counties would be in debt to other counties.
Why not?
Yeah, why not?
At least it's to a public figure, not a private bank.
Let a county default from another county. Then how does that run out?
Or that county, if it's a neighboring county, we get to Knox County.
We get to seize that county.
We'll annex a little chunk of your county.
Assets.
Sure, why not?
We get your fire trucks.
What happens when a municipality defaults on a loan to a bank? The state usually buys it, and the state takes over control.
Yeah, I think they take over running it.
What happens when the state defaults on a loan? The bank says, man, that sucks. Can you get around to trying to fix this at some point? Because we can't really do anything to you. Or the federal government steps in.
Give me a case of a state defaulting on a loan.
I don't know. I mean, I know California got pretty close a couple years ago, but
okay.
I'm sure states have defaulted on loans in the past.
To the federal government or to banks?
To banks, I would assume.
states borrow money from banks.
I mean, they do bonds, so that's borrowing money from the constituency because they're selling the bonds, and they're not paying bonds back. I don't know. I don't know exactly how the loan process works on the top levels. But sure, same thing. Go back to our little small community, sell bonds. There's definitely some people that have some money in the town. Sell bonds. And then when the road gets built and you pay the bonds back over 30 years, you pay it with an interest increase, and it's a good investment for the community. I would buy a bond for the stadium if they'd sell them. Why not? Give me a 30-year bond for $1,000 today that's going to pay me $1,500, $1,800 back over the next 30 years. I'd do it. Boyd's good for it.
Not that many people have that extra disposable income for that.
Well, where's the money? You're right, because giving people the choice to invest in their community versus taking the money from them to invest in their community makes it okay, or doesn't make it okay. Whichever way you want to verb that. Because you have a choice to invest in your community, but no, you know what? We're going to steal your money from you so that we can invest in your community. That's a good collective.
I'm saying in your scenario of asking constituents in a town to buy bonds, I'm saying more often than not, most people are not able to have $10,000, $20,000 just to say, hey, here's this, will you pay me back more in 10 or 15 years? I don't know. It's like 1 in 3 people live like paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
Let's see, 1 in 3 are just living probably barely above that.
Right. So then the inverse is 1 in 3 people have disposable income that they could maybe invest, maybe not 10,000, but they could do 1,000, and you could get 1,000 people, but $1,000 each, or
I don't see the likelihood of people pitching in money for that. And they're like, no thanks.
I mean, we have GoFundMes that raise millions of dollars for different weird random causes. Same thing.
I agree.
Except the GoFundMe, you're not even promised to get your own money back.
No,
that's just a just a straight up donation.
Right. Well, that's what they call it, crowdsourcing, because they're getting large amounts.
That's essentially what I'm advocating for, is crowdsourcing a municipal project.
I'm still going off on the premise of a small town.
Sure. Small town, crowdsource a municipal project. You have a locality. I mean, I don't think the city, I think it's counties. I don't think you could go down to city by city, because then you get into like, does Clinton count as a city, or is it part of Knox County? I think you just do it county by county.
Right.
As the locality. I think you have sub-localities as far as, incorporated townships inside, but I think for tax purposes and for clarification, you just let the state handle things. Or not let the state handle things, let the counties do that part. But then have a subset for a city that has an additional property tax or something like that, and that additional property tax goes to pay for city services that the county doesn't get, like we do here with fire and police and whatnot.
I mean, the point of the taxes is taxing like everyone semi-equally. They are able to break that up, but that's only taking small chunks out of everybody instead of just, hey, can we ask 100 people to give $10,000 each? Right,
and it's usually the way taxes work is it's usually the poorest pay the most percentage of themselves over time. So we tax the poor more, technically.
That's yeah. There's definitely people who get lost right there in that gray area of people, that make too much money to be on TennCare.
And the poor people get audited by the IRS more often than the rich people, not because they are trying to steal more tax money than the rich people are. It's just that lawyers are a pain in the ass for the IRS, so they don't bother with people that can afford a lawyer. So if they're going to go and chase somebody down for avoiding their taxes, it's going to be the poor guy because he avoided his taxes because he couldn't afford it. But he also can't afford an attorney to fight off the IRS when they come knocking on his door.
Oh, I hear many cases of people like, that person hasn't paid taxes in 10 years. So I don't know how often the IRS is really auditing a whole bunch of people all the time.
I mean, I think I'm certain there's a number somewhere where they're like, that guy owes $10,000. It's not worth the effort to chase him down. Especially when he's not going to be able to pay it anyway. We're going to have to put him on this 5-year whatever. But the inverse is that guy owes millions, but he's got lawyers, and it's going to cost us most of those millions to get those millions out of him. So it's not worth it. And so it's the middle lower ground that gets the most action from the IRS. because they're the least likely to.
I'm not sure how much lawyers can help you when they have, like, on paper, the filings that you've given them are incorrect and taxes are owed.
I mean, okay, so
I don't think there's much, like, negotiation in there. It's like,
like, incorrect how? I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of gray area in tax reporting that you could argue in court over and over.
Usually, if they're auditing it, they've found patterns of false filing, either undervaluing something, overvaluing something.
Hi, I'm Lord Seth, the attorney. Can you show me the proof of that? How did you come to the conclusion of this? Let's hold a hearing in 6 months and let a judge look at it.
So they're auditing on speculation?
I don't know. I mean,
they go through the process of auditing someone.
It could be fact, but
maybe
it could be fact, but the facts have to hold up under scrutiny. And a defense attorney for someone getting audited their job is to test the viability of those facts by scrutinizing them.
I agree.
And to scrutinize them is not just it can be a conversation between attorneys where it's like, hey, yeah, we accept this.
It's complex, but it's in writing.
We accept we accept those facts as you guys present them, but over here we don't accept those as facts. How do we settle that? Oh, we go to court and have a judge look at it, and I present what I see as a fact, you present what you see as a fact, and then the judge adjudicates, and then we go to next level, and we do that over and over again. It's how any lawsuit or whatever, any good lawyer makes some stuff go away, depending on the type of suit in question. The glove doesn't fit.
Of a tax court. I wonder what district or whatever they do tax.
I don't know. The glove doesn't fit, right? I mean, this is OJ's glove. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Look, it doesn't even fit on his hand. That's lawyer 101. Let's settle on what the facts are here. And the IRS says these are the facts, and I, as your attorney, am saying, no, those aren't facts. And we'll go adjudicate every single one of them. They cost tens of thousands of dollars in process and other lawyers and court filing fees and all that kind of stuff. And at some point, fuck it, it's not worth it. Why are we chasing $1 million down from a guy that's going to cost us $1.5 million to collect?
So we should just not do it. Like, oh, you're rich, you got
lawyers.
I'm
not advocating anything here. I'm just stating the fact.
We should just let them go.
I'm stating the fact that, historically speaking, the IRS puts more energy and effort to collecting from middle, lower class people who can't afford a lawyer for any tax violations. Because they don't want to fight the top end, because the top end will fight it in court, and the low end doesn't have enough to pay it anyway, so it's not worth the time. So the lower middle end is who they go after.
Send me your source on this.
Okay. I will dig that up.
I could very much see the population of it being skewed, as you do have more lower income people versus the super rich. So on a per person basis, yes, there are less of the 1% that are getting tax scrutiny or whatever, that are even going forward and having process served upon them and going to court.
I follow what you're saying. Like the in gross numbers, there are more people that are poor than there are that are super rich.
And that's only that I wonder if maybe that's what the kind of stats you were referring to, if that could explain why there are more low income people that get audited, just because there are that much more lower income people.
Okay, I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah. Just trying to throw a wrench in the cog. Don't have to look it up now. This is not an immediate topic.
It is an immediate topic. But anyway, we're talking about state legislature.
ESPN's not going to tell you anything about that.
No, but we got Pittsburgh. We got a Pittsburgh game and a Nashville game going on right now.
Yeah,
Preds are 2-2 with the.
I was about to say it was 1-1 last time I saw.
Pens are down 1-2 to Boston. I don't know what Syracuse, University of Syracuse,
New York.
I don't know. Anyway, we were talking about state legislature stuff, but we're talking about the pay of the job. That's where we started all that. And I don't know. I guess to me, it's I think there's a real. I understand the argument, and I'm not wholly opposed to the argument. Dylan made the argument here for county commissioners that maybe we should transition this into a full-time job. full-time job state salaries are at least like 60, something like that for an elected official. Like, I can't remember what.
I think it would at least take away that excuse of like, well, I didn't have time. This is a part-time job. It's like, no, it's full-time. Like, this is what you do. Do it.
I mean, again, like I ask commissioners what the job is. And, I think Larson, as much as liberal Larson's the evilest thing around or whatever the fuck that people are pitching around right now, I think his answer was good. I think it's unfortunate, but, he likes to call the job being a switchboard operator. Constituent of his, since he's an at-large seat, so anybody in the county can call Larson and be like, hey, man, I'm trying to figure this thing out. If it involves government. And whether it involves the commission directly or not, he feels at least, and I think this is a general consensus among many commissioners, that it's like, I have access because of the job to all the different departments and all the different people that run around here and there and everywhere and all that kind of stuff. I can get you to the right person. It's not my job per se, but that's what a lot of them do.
I think that's what some of it is. It's just kind of pointing them in the right direction. It's not necessarily holding their hand through the whole process. It's a lot of constituents like, hey, I don't know what's going on with this. Like, I don't know how, utility services work or whatever.
Right.
Can you help me?
Right. And I think a lot of them do. And I think
you're my guy that knows a lot more about all this stuff. Can you at least point me in the right direction?
Right. And I think a lot of them take that as part of the job, even though I don't think it's technically part of the job. That's what I'm saying. And I think that is a good general part of the job that maybe should exist somewhere. Maybe it shouldn't exist inside the commission. Maybe we should have a community affairs liaison's office that is their job, is to help people get together with the people they need to help them with the city or county services that they need access to and trying to figure all this stuff out. Anyway, but again, going back to the beginning, the beginning of the idea is, what is a commissioner's job? We set ordinances. So if we have a county ordinance, commission votes on that, and then land use. Outside of that, there ain't much to do. Why does it need to be a full-time job? Like, I get the argument of, well, make it a full-time job. It should open up accessibility for more people to seek the job. Because some people couldn't, even though it's a part-time job, couldn't because they can't do that job.
Random hours at times. Like, hey, we need to call this meeting. Right.
They can't do that job and keep their current job. But, I mean, hell, even if that, though, I mean, if you're in a middle, lower class income range, and you have a decent job right now, not great, paying the bills. I don't know, mid 30s, maybe 40 grand a year, something like that. Like, it's enough to pay the bills, but it's tight. Even if you could get elected to a similar or increased pay job, personal financially speaking, is that a good idea? Is that job going to be there waiting for you when you don't get elected in the next cycle or you term out after 2? 8 years from now, that job ain't going to be there anymore.
Most likely not.
Is it the appropriate personal financial move for you? So it doesn't matter what the pay is. See, that's one of the things that I'm kind of stuck on. You get what I'm saying? Like, okay, get the full-time pay because that makes it easier for people to be able to seek the job because then they don't have to worry about paying their bills and doing the job at the same time. The job will pay the bills. But, man, I mean, if you're working for a company and you've been there for a couple of years and you've worked your way up and you're kind of making decent pay, do you want to vacate that job for 4 to 8 years? Because I think, to me, the concern would be is that's gonna breed career politicians. Like, I have to seek another office. I termed out, but I got to get another job. I got to get a job. I mean, maybe having been a commissioner, you might be in better shape to get a job in the private sector on the other side because you are a known figure and your knowledge that you've learned in the time and that experience that you have may be of value to employers on the other side.
All right.
But I don't know. Again, like, that part of it kind of strikes me a little bit sideways too. It's like it'd be kind of weird. I mean,
that's a choice people make leaving any kind of field, going into a different field.
Yeah, but you go into a different field that doesn't necessarily have a clock on it, where this one has a clock. I'm going into a job that if I win, I'm guaranteed 4 years. If I don't really fuck it up, I'm not guaranteed that 4 years.
There's some jobs that only do like on a contract basis.
That's true. That's true. That's fair.
Okay, we're signing you on a 2-year contract.
Right, or it's this particular project, and when the particular project's done, you move on.
We may rehire you, but it's not a guarantee.
Right. We're doing a project. And again, I agree that exists, but I don't think that's certainly not average. And if the point
and it's not average that people leave jobs to go work for the small amount of county and city commission seats on the relative population hole.
Right, but I think that's the argument to keep it part-time, is that if we keep it part-time, we should be doing our best to keep it part-time hours so that you have the ability to work your day job and you don't have to leave your day job to take this job. So that you don't have to upend. You're just adding on a little bit to your life to do this thing and give back to your community, not we're upending everything you're doing. So
it's complicated.
I mean,
you have a good chunk of constituents that want their lawmakers to do more, and there's a good chunk of constituents that want their lawmakers to do less.
But again, though, like what do what? Like, are we asking that a county commissioner is? I mean,
some of it's
they're going to they're going to go and
some are bloated expectations of their lawmakers that think they can fix all the problems.
I think that's what I'm asking, right? They're going to go out there with the shovel and fill in the asphalt, or they're going to ride along with the sheriff's deputy so there's enough bodies on the street cop-wise, or they're going to go and weld bridge portions back together because they're starting to break apart,
right?
Or they're going to go and dig pick up trash or litter pickup. Like, what more are they supposed to be doing realistically? Like, they're supposed to get together, change an ordinance, add an ordinance, subtract an ordinance, agree to the mayor's budget, and land use. That's all they're supposed to do. Why should it be a full-time job? What more should they be doing, or could they be doing in a full-time, if they were there full-time, if they were working 9 to 5? Because I think, too, part of it, I think it is absolutely...
It opens up more time to actually have meet and greets with their constituents, to really, put their ears to the ground of what's going on and what kind of issues they're having, to where maybe they do need to... I just want to advocate, of just people asking them for more things, so then they have to go back and add more ordinances.
I mean, I think they're obligated for what? Like 6 hours a month?
I have no idea.
I mean, they have a work session and a meeting. And then I'm pretty sure all of them are at least one committee. And I think each of those are about a 2-hour obligation, give or take. Board of Health time frame kind of threw everything off because those were 9-hour meetings. But
on average, how are most people that you have interviewed that are in the position or have been in the position, like, have you talked to like what they do on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis as a lawmaker?
I mean, they do. They read up on stuff, whether it's so if there's I can't remember who particularly, but like certain ordinances coming up, right? They know it's on the agenda.
Right.
Commissioner whomever has proposed this ordinance, here's the write-up of it. The more due diligence kind of ones are calling people. Say it's a park project. Like, hey, we want to do this park project. We want to add another fucking dog park because we need more. And it's like, okay, well, how much does it cost? All this kind of stuff. Whoever presents that, whether it's the county parks department or a commissioner themselves, presents that in the form and fills out all the different information that they think people are going to need. I would say the better commissioner is going to say, okay, cool. They're going to call the parks department. They're going to call engineering. They're going to call the different people in the different offices that are going to be part of the project when it's coming on. They're like, do you think these numbers are right? Do you feel like this is something we do? They're going to call the people that live nearby or the businesses nearby and check in with them. Hey, do you think this is going to be a net positive for you guys? They're going to look at what the long-term effects are going to be on environmental or something like that, if there's anything of that nature. But... to me, it's just a kind of a telephone game is what it sounds like. You get the general idea and you talk to the people on who it affects most, whether it's the people that it's going to be doing the work that's being requested, and you check that against the existing budget and can we fit this in the budget? Do we have enough extra funds to add this without taking away from something else that we want to have going on? And then you get back and you go to the meeting and you talk about it some more and then vote on it. It's probably a couple hours outside. Depending on how well the original ordinance proposal was written. But a couple hours talking to a couple of people. Like Nick Cipro was in here. I totally disagree with him. Like the next door neighbor should be the most important person on a land use conversation. They're an important person to talk to. I agree. But if the neighbor says no, we say no. I don't know about that.
You think that was what he was implying?
Yeah. He all but said it. He might have actually said it that way. I don't remember exactly how he said it. But, I think, again, land use is the big one. And I think land use should be easier once we get this new 30-year plan in place, because one of the problems we're having currently is that the plan is super old. And so it's a balancing act of looking back to how applicable the plan is to now. Is it still right? Does it still make sense to where we're at now? Is this something we should adjust because I want it? Or is this something that they specifically in the old plan were avoiding because of some reason that we forgot about because it's been so damn long since they wrote it? I think that's part of where there's more work in it for them because the current plan is so old, but the new plan's supposed to go in this year, I think. This new 30-year one that's like subdivided into like 3-year subgroupings and all these different sector plannings and different stuff like that, which again, the majority of that actually goes into a full-time office. It's the Metropolitan Planning Commission, which is both bodies control it or whatever you want to say, but that's a full-time office. Like there's a whole staff of people that work in the Planning Commission office full-time.
Right.
They are just essentially advising the commission when the commission asks. So, hey, developer comes in, I want to do this thing over here. Well, it's not on the plan, so it has to come to the commission to be reviewed. The Planning Commission says, it's not inside the plan, but, it could be a benefit, whatever. It's not completely blowing the plan out of the water or whatever. Here's the information that we have. Commissioner, decide. So again, to me, I don't know if it makes sense for it to be a full-time job. What are we paying extra for? Because if it's a full-time job, we're going to pay more.
Right.
In our tax spending and a budget that's already tight enough.
I mean, that's the question of, is there more they could be doing?
But I know
the main question is, what more could they do?
But again, it's as far as the Constitution and then the charter for the county goes, I don't think there's a lot of room. I think the mayor's office has a lot of. I mean, maybe we could change the charter and split up some of the stuff that the mayor's office has on, but we're not going to cut the mayor's budget. So if it's a money conversation, okay, the commission takes on more of the responsibilities because the mayor oversees a bunch of different departments directly,
right?
Where it doesn't have to go through commission unless it's outside a certain value. And so, okay, well, let's make it so, like the mayor oversees parks. County parks department is under the county executive mayor's office, banner.
Right.
And so if parks wants to do a thing, they just have to ask the mayor, and the mayor has to say yes or no. The only reason that a parks issue goes to commission if it's over a certain amount outside of budget. Right. Right. One particular item, like if they were going to build something in a park that was over $10,000, but it has to be like one thing, then it would have to go to commission. But if it's in budget, and because I think a total project, I don't think has to be commission approved. I think it just has to be an item in the project to be in that big. Especially, and if it's not already within the budget of, I don't know, it's fucking weird. That I think it might.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, if they've
right, Parks has a $10 million budget, and they're going to do renovations here and renovations there.
As long as you're staying in your budget and you're not asking us for more money, then it's your decision and how you want to use that budget.
Right, but if you as the Parks Department, even though it's within your budget, wants to spend $15,000 on one purchase, and whether that one purchase is dozen slides.
So there's a one item caveat in there.
Right. And the other weird one that I kind of get and kind of don't get is that to accept funding for a thing. So like when the Boyd family donates another fucking dog park to the county, essentially like it's a both sides of the balance sheet proposal. So you're receiving, the county is receiving a $10,000 piece of property. The Parks Department's receiving a $10,000 piece of property. Theoretically, the county is then buying that $10,000 piece of property from the Boyds indirectly, but since it's got that value, it has to be approved by commission. Even though they're not actually spending the money, the way it hits the balance sheet, it comes off of basically the commission has to approve that because it's an expenditure of.
You just save $10,000 essentially, if it's gifted, I guess, to the park.
Right. No, I think it's because it goes on as a credit, but it also goes on as a debit in the balance sheet, and they have to approve that debit. So it goes in as a credit to the county, but a debit to the Parks Department. And since that $10,000 is going to come out of the Parks Department thing, it has to go through commission approval. It's just a money. It's a number counting game, but I think it's a good deal because I mean, there's 1,000 reasons, probably 800 of them not great, why a community member might donate something to a county or a city or whatever, and we want to make sure that that's for the right purposes and not a bribe or anything of that nature. So make it a body decision instead of an individual one, so that we have a little bit of oversight.
Right, more eyes on that one. They're like, no, it's good.
Right.
My name is Bob, and I approve this.
Mayor Bob. But again, I think to get to the brass tacks of it is I still don't know what the job is. I make this joke all the time, but for the most part, overall, the job does not necessitate full-time hours. Ought not to necessitate full-time hours. It is not written to be that way. The list of things that you are supposed to be doing as a commissioner is not that great. So to pay more seems like a waste of funds to me, I guess is the point I'm getting to.
I'd almost like to make it... I'd almost be in favor of it being full-time, just to give them that extra time to, like I said, go and actually talk to the constituents. Like, hey, go knock on some doors. Figure out what's going on in your neighborhood. Talk to people.
So 30 hours.
I mean, a lot of people's complaint with their lawmakers is they don't feel like they're being heard.
See, I get it. I get the complaint, but I also question that complaint too, because I think a lot of people construe the idea of being heard and being listened to. I'm listening to you. I'm listening to what you're saying. Right. I'm not going to do what you're asking me to do because 10,000 other people over here are telling me the opposite, right. Or there is a good or a bad reason, whatever it is. There is a reason that I'm going to make a decision on the thing the way I'm going to make it. And you told me about it, and you told me all these good reasons and all these things, but I'm still making the decision I was planning on, which is not what you wanted. Was I listening to you? Or have you been heard? Because I didn't do what you asked me to.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I think there's a lot of people that take that the other way. That say, I told him not to do that, and he did it anyway. He's not listening to me.
And that's where it takes a little bit of being an adult, that you're not always going to get your way, and you have to understand.
I know. I'm just saying. I think that's a like you picked apart my word survey thing earlier. I think that's the same kind of thing. I think there are people that
and I get what you're saying, but
aren't adult about it.
But at the same time, there are a lot of people that do feel better just that they've been able to get a hold of their lawmaker and actually have their voice be listened to.
See what I find,
not heard, but.
What I find
they may at least feel a little bit better, and they're like, hey, he actually took the time to sit down and actually listen to my concerns. Like, the concerns may not have been important to him or what he was trying to get accomplished, but it may have also changed that lawmaker's
and he gave me
the lawmaker's mind. Like, I didn't really think about that tiny aspect of it. When I'm looking at this thing, maybe I do need to carve out a certain area for the specific concern.
When I was talking to lawmaker about it, and I told him my concerns, lawmaker responded to me with some of the reasoning behind why they were thinking to do and what they're planning on doing.
Yeah. That's where it gives them that opportunity.
I understood where they were coming from on that, and I still don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand where they're going with what they're doing.
Right. Yeah. It gives them that opportunity to hey, you're not seeing the side of it that I'm looking at. Let me show you what I'm seeing.
So they just need to have a booth set up when they're every day of the week.
Not necessarily.
Just a place where you can, just a storefront in some accessible area where they just sit in the office.
They have
all day.
The random meet and greets, which I'm assuming you can still go up and talk to.
I've had a couple people, Dominique Oakley from District 7 school board race, like she said, and she started it with her campaign every Tuesday. She's at Mahalo, and she just goes and she'll sit in Mahalo. It's Trevor Bain's coffee joint up there on Emory.
Yeah.
This episode, not too.
It's like a Hawaiian themed bar and grill.
It's a coffee shop. Yeah, it's just past the shop up there on Emory. It's Trevor Bain, NASCAR guy.
Huh.
It's his place. This episode is not brought to you by Mahalo. Although I guess check him out. I don't know. But I think it's every Tuesday. She's like, I'll be there from 7 to 9 or 6 to 8 or something like that.
That's
she just hangs out, has a cup of coffee. People know that she's there. They can come up and talk to her.
Right. But how much is that promoted?
I don't know. But she's also not in office yet. She started it with her campaign, but if and when she wins, she will continue doing so.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, and she said like it's something that some people have done before, and whatever, and it should be a regular thing. And I was like, I like that too. I think it should be. I'm not opposed to that. I think you should be accessible. And again, but 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week might be enough. Like I'd be curious if she gets going on it, and if people show up, and if she's talking to people, and blah 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 blah. If she feels like there's a need for more, like does she need more? Is she doing plenty of communication with plenty of people other ways and stuff like that?
Yeah.
How many hours is she really spending communicating with the constituency? Not because of her time constraints, but of theirs. Like, are a lot of people talking to her, emailing, calling, and all that stuff, and stopping by her little meet and greet thing, or just because I would argue that I would assume that there's not a lot, generally speaking, unless it's a hot topic thing, like we got the mask thing and all this different shit we've had in the last couple of years.
I want to say I was at, I think maybe Schultzbrow last year or so before. I think there was some kind of like meet and greet that was going on with some kind of politician that was there, and it didn't seem like anybody really showed up for us. It's probably just his friends and supporters.
There was a gubernatorial candidate that stopped in Schultzbrow earlier this year.
That might be what I'm thinking of.
Maybe
I just saw. Yeah, maybe I wasn't there, but maybe I saw pictures of it. And I'm like, "There's no."
Yeah, I made fun of it on the show because there were like six people there, and I was like, hey, "Come on, Matt, that's all we got." That's all we got. We got six Democrats in Knoxville. Right. But yeah, some people do it. So like, I've talked to Aaron at length about maybe hosting a debate for the show live at one of his places, and he's like, "What is it exactly?" I was like, "It'd be a political debate. A couple of candidates running for some seat." Fuck no. Like, before I finished pitching it to him, he's like, no, I'm not having some fucking political debate in my bar. I mean, that was the rule when I was a bartender. No politics, no religion. You don't have those conversations.
Right.
And if people start having that conversation, you watch, you pay attention for the health and safety of those around them. You pay attention to that group that's starting to get into that conversation. Because in my experience, it's always been Hooters girls, but politics and religion start a lot of fights.
Right.
It's Hooters girls and pool. Started more fights in my experience personally. And that's because people like to gamble on pool. Right. And for some reason, they think the establishment that the pool table is in is supposed to be the arbiter of fairness in their gambling at pool.
This guy bet me $5 and he's not paying me.
Yeah, he bet me $20 and I beat him. Okay. Well, he's not paying me my $20.
This isn't a gambling hall.
Okay. Like, technically, you can lose your liquor license if you know that.
Right.
It's like, hey, buddy, do you like those Jack shots you've been drinking? Yeah? Then shut the fuck up. But it's not cards, so it's not that big a deal. The state gambling, whatever department doesn't give a shit unless it's cards or dice. But, I get it. I played by that rule for a long time in the bartending games. Like, politics, sports, and alcohol don't get together. Or politics, religion, and alcohol getting together usually ends up poorly. And that's unfortunate, because that's kind of how this country was built. Like, right. That's where we came from. And I think that's one of the things we need to get back to. I think we need to get back to being able to be in public spaces and have real, hot, maybe a little angry conversation. But at the end of the day, we're not doing any real things other than talking, trying to get the ideas out, trying to talk to each other. Because I think that's one of the things that's lacking is you get cut off from talking. You get stopped. We're not having a conversation about that. Like, well, that's not something we're allowed to talk about here because it's a bar and that's politics. And it's like, I think we need to. I think we need to figure out how to get back to that where we could talk about it and have some pretty heated and passionate discussions, get real serious about it. But at the end of the day, we're not punching each other in the face because we don't agree.
That's where it's coming down to the individual level of how they want to have public discourse.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I suffer from it too. Obviously, I get hot and bothered and I get excited and I get a little aggressive and I don't generally mean it personally, but I can understand how people take it personally sometimes when I get excited
about the way they feel about something.
Yeah. And so like that is a consequence of being a human, I think. But I think at the end of the day, you can have that and you can go further than you meant to.
Right.
And I think if it's in good faith, you could say, okay, I see where we both screwed up there. I don't hate him for that or her, but that sucks that we got that far.
Yeah.
But I think the other part too, I think that's something that's interesting. There was a study they were talking about on Breaking Points that kind of an evil genius, like whatever. I can't remember who the research group was, but they basically took people who were self-admitted to being religiously Fox News watchers. and for like a period of time force them to watch only CNN for equivalent time periods and not allow them Fox. And so after they had a survey, they had a pre-survey and a post-survey.
So you have some people who are going to hate it even more, because they were forced to watch it.
Right. Well, they volunteered for it, so they were open to some level anyway. And that's, again, is one of the biases that is probably a reality in the study. But basically what they're saying is that, they had a set, the survey that was coming in and people's views on certain topics, and then the survey coming out after they were forced to watch CNN for a period of time. And their views on those same topics having the experience of that 6-week time period or whatever. And so a lot of people's views changed on the things. And so it's like, well, that's kind of cool. That means there's room.
Right.
That means there's people who have the ability to take in information from other sources and understand it. And so what we need to get to the point is where you can watch a Fox News and a CNN and a Compass and a Knox News Sentinel story and a WIR story and congeal that into one thought process instead of only having one source.
Right. Well, that's why they talk about the whole echo chamber effect. Like if you keep hearing just like one side of a particular topic, that's the only thing that you have knowledge of on that topic.
Right. Right. And I suffer from it somewhat in my ways, but like I do think that is one of the issues we have. And I don't know. Like, I think that's one of the fun things that's going on right now with the new digital era of news and media. You get some crazy shit.
Right.
But you get options. Because you can get the same news on the same story with complex, different intricacies, look into it, that are just in different fields and formats.
Right.
Like, you can get one from a comedian-style show where they're funny and they're being ridiculous about it and stuff, but they're talking specifically about a thing, real facts kind of stuff. And it's the same exact story that's on CNN, but, man, it's more enjoyable from these guys than it is from CNN.
Right.
Or stuff like that.
Daily Show type thing.
Yeah. It's real news.
Like, we're telling you real facts, but we're kind of like poking fun at sometimes the ridiculousness of it.
Right. Or making fun of ourselves or making fun of whatever, or just throwing in dick and fart jokes in the middle of it because it's funny.
Right.
And I like that's kind of where my style goes, but I think having entertaining news that's still honest is what's possible right now. Because right now it's entertaining with what's the old cliche, it bleeds, it leads.
Right.
That's the entertainment, is the shock and awe value. That's what CNN and Fox are after. They want you mad or sad or scared.
I mean, there's also like I think the detriment of some of the algorithms that are used on some of the more electronic sources of news.
Yeah.
To where it's it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's picking up on what news you're looking at, and it's trying to help you by sending more of that, saying like, oh, you're interested in sports, we're going to send you more sports stories.
Right.
As to where that algorithm kind of gets skewed, and it's like, well, I'm only clicking on more sports stories because you keep sending me sports stories, so now you think I'm just a sports fanatic constantly. And
right.
I like other stuff too. I like cooking.
Right, and I'm uber susceptible issue. I have a problem with it myself because I'm more likely to engage with the piece, like comment on somebody else's comment or something like that when it pisses me off. It's like, this is fucking dumb. Are you ridiculous? Right. This is I'm more likely to do that. And so it thinks.
That's common. I mean, where people are apt to complain about a thing than actually go back and compliment it. Go to a restaurant's website and be like, I had an awesome time last night.
Because
that's less than like, I had a really shitty time last night. I'm going to tell you all about it.
Because honestly, the algorithm doesn't necessarily care what you write. It just cares that you're writing.
Right. You've interacted with it.
Right. And so it's going to send you more things that you interact with, and if you interact with if you only tend to interact when you're angry about it,
all right, it's sending you more things that you hate.
It's going to send you more things that get you angry because you're going to interact with it. Because all they want is time. That's all that Facebook wants is your time.
True.
They just want your face in the thing, because the more time your face is on the thing, the more time they can squeeze an ad in, and they get paid. Yeah, and I mean there is a problem with that for sure. But what else was there? There was something else I wanted to talk about. Talked about how stupid primaries are. Talked about full-time, part-time state position.
Did you mention how long early voting is going on until?
It's 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay.
Because, I mean, election day is the 3rd, 5th? It's the 5th because it's the 4th? 3rd. Primary election day is the 3rd. Early voting goes to the Saturday before. No. To the Wednesday or Thursday before. So it goes to like 27, 28, something like that. And then we have a break over that weekend. And then primary day is, I think it's the 3rd. And then the August election is the Thursday. Or something. It's weird.
Please check your more official sources.
Well, I mean, I could
for proper dates.
I mean, I could do it if you want me to do it correctly, I can do it correctly.
Oh, I was just curious. I thought it'd be a good thing to put out.
Yeah.
For the 6 or 7 people that are listening. Early voting's the 13th to 28th. Tuesday, May 3rd is the primary election. 22 local general with state primary is August 4th. And then November, whatever, is the state general, which may or may not include some ballot items. I haven't seen that one. We talked about that one a little bit. I haven't seen if that one actually got through the pot questionnaire to go on the ballot. That's not going on until the November, I believe.
Right. Any ballot item is automatically on November, regardless. And regardless, because the city elections are August, November anyway. And so if there's, and and here's what's crazy, and this is what Chris was talking about on the Compass interview. So check out the Compass podcast and listen to the whole interview with Chris Davis there. But he was talking about on the interview, it's like the November election will get better turnout. And there's then the August general, certainly than this May primary. But it'll have better turnout in the November election. And there's like 3 items on it, 5 items on it. I don't think I even have one. Because maybe the House rep, maybe our federal House rep for me is on it, I think. But I think that's the only one that might be on it.
I've seen a couple articles. There was a number of state lawmakers that have come out and said they're not running again. Some on the GOP side may be peripheral links to...
Oh, there's governor. Sorry, there is a big one on there. Governor's on there. Okay. Yeah, Burchett's on there. Mark Hammond's running against him. State Senate 5 and 7.
Yeah, apparently, I think I heard yesterday there was a lawsuit against the Democratic candidate for governor, or there was a challenge about the wasn't her signatures, but it was the date. I guess you sign and date or whatever, and some of the dates were wrong on there. And actually, I think it went to the Tennessee Supreme Court, and they basically said that like the dates on there aren't really what matters the most. It's the actual signatures. Because I guess without some of those disputed signatures,
so like people like
she wouldn't have the correct number. But I think that's how it was put in. I guess some people like wrote down the wrong date of when they had signed it. Tennessee Supreme Court, I guess, basically said that wasn't as important as like getting all the signatures. If somebody wrote down the wrong date, it's not really. They still supported it. I'm assuming they can still go back and maybe challenge all those signatures, but I think the only thing that was challenged was the date on those signatures.
Right. I'm confused. Like but like what? So like people like put like 23 instead of 22. Like
I didn't hear the specifics on it.
Because I mean, I could see it being an issue where you go out and collect a page full of signatures in 2018 and just make a copy and keep it, and then run again later and just pull that same petition sheet out.
More of like a day thing, because hell, I struggled to remember like what day of the month it is.
I'm just saying, like, but as far as like, what would be the point in making an issue out of the dates? Unless it's past the deadline, but then you didn't turn it in deadline on time. And so it's like, like these, the state races were due on April 7th, and somebody dated theirs April 13th. Well, did they sign it on April 13th? If they did, you didn't turn it in yet. So that doesn't work. So I'm confused. Oh, there's no... All right, so if I'm reading this correctly, the governor's races this year, which I knew that and I forgot, but if I'm reading this correctly, Governor Lee is running there is no primary challenger for Governor Lee, and there's at least no more than one Democrat running, because there are no Democrat petitions turned in. Governor Lee's isn't turned in. I'm so confused. I don't know what I'm looking at. I'm confused. But it's for the primary only. Anyway, Miss Constance, I need to call her. But Tim Burchett's seat's up. Richard Briggs is running to keep his seat. Jason Zachary's running to keep his seat. Sam's for his seat. Gloria Johnson's Lafferty seats. All the state rep seats. Duh. The state executive races. Farragut Mayor's up this year. It's going to be Bill Johns versus Ron Williams. But I find this interesting. I was looking down through here. So I was complaining about Elaine Davis last week, kind of running against an incumbent, kind of fucked up, kind of weird thing. Posse Poscott, no. Jack Vaughn. Oh, it's state executive committee. I don't care about that. Hornbeck, there's Hornbeck running for 6, which is so fucking weird. Randy Pace is running for 6. Oh, let's go, Randy. That's funny.
For
state executive committee.
State executive? Gotcha.
Yeah. Party bullshit that we shouldn't be able to vote on. Like that, I agree. I shouldn't be able to vote on that. I'm gonna vote for Randy Pace. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I should but I agree with that. But at the same time, I shouldn't be helping pay for them to make those decisions either. So I'm going to vote. I feel like I paid for it. I could play. Maybe I'll pick up the Democratic primary in August with my county general and see if I can get challenged multiple times this year. That'll be fun. Did you find it?
I think I found the person. I think it's Campbell.
And what was the... What?
Oh, sorry, no, that's a congressional district. I thought that was gubernatorial. I heard it on the radio yesterday.
Nationals up 3-2. Pens are still down 2-1. Running out of hockey. Let's go, boys.
What period are we in?
Both of them are in the third. Just started the third, though. There's a lot of hockey left. 1 goal is not a runaway by any means. I don't know. I guess one of the things I've been thinking about too is we argue all the time. We were arguing at length about I don't feel like it's necessary that the government knows I own things. But I think the better conversation to have on that is this perspective thing. Same thing I was kind of making fun of Todd, or not making fun of, but arguing with Todd Fromier with, is we have accepted a limited number of perspectives on how we're supposed to look at things. Some of them more blatant than others. Democrat, Republican, that's only 2 perspectives that are allowed to really play, right? I find it not problematic. That's not the right word. I feel like I might be a little crazy because I come at a handful of things from an obviously outside perspective. My general take on government in general is I'm going to, at minimum, be skeptical of every single item, thing, whatever they want to do. That is a generous version of how I treat government things.
Okay.
And that's not your perspective. You start with, they're probably doing something right. I mean, that's what am I right? I mean, does that seem out of place for you?
For the most part. I mean, I tried to take it with a gut reaction of, the piece of information that I'm reading.
Yeah, and I guess
whether it passes that initial kind of gut check.
And I think there's implication to there's a lot of implication to that, to the way we look at policy and stuff starting there. Because if my starting point is probably not great, they said so, it's probably not great. But your starting point is they're smart people, they know what they're doing. Let's give this a shot.
I assume that there's a reason behind it.
Right.
Especially it's made to the point that like a certain piece of legislation has been announced. I'm like, there's a lot of people that have looked at this as far as legal people involved in the field that piece of legislation is involved with.
Right. And I get it. Like I think
it's at least passed by a few people's eyes and scrutiny before making it so far as to be an amendment to our state constitution.
Right. I could track where that logic comes from. That it's just not natural for me. Like I just not like I don't buy it. Like I don't believe. My general reaction is I am not. I mean, I don't disagree that plenty of different people have looked at it or whatever, but I feel like it's a choice game of like I'm going to pick who in the field's going to look this over and give the opinion on it, and I'm going to go ahead and get into this with a certain level of support beforehand, and I don't know. I just don't like I don't trust myself sometimes to make good decisions for myself. Why would I trust others? Like, what qualifications do they have? Because they have a certain degree, they have a certain job title. That's been the one I keep going back to. Like, it's like, okay, well, he's an FBI agent. He's been through all the different stuff that FBI agents do, so he's probably a decent dude. He's probably going to be forthright and honest and legal about what he's doing, right? Maybe. Like I don't. That is not a natural thought process for me. My assumption is he's an FBI agent. He's like he's a cop in general. He has a job to do, and that job is to arrest people. That's what I feel like their job is to do. Where other people, maybe a little bit more optimistic people than me, are they to protect and serve. They're here to help me. They're help to keep the streets safe and that kind of stuff. I
think that's the case for the most part.
The average person sees a cop as a protect and serve, as a positive.
Yes.
Okay. Again, this is I'm trying to analyze my own perspective here and how I got to be such a skeptical hater. But I mean, I don't know. I don't feel like I don't feel like I'm coming at this with nothing. Like
it's not wrong to acknowledge that there are shitty people out there, but that's across the board.
Right. And see, that's my thing, is that it's across the board.
But it's small parts of it across the board.
Right. But it's across
Everyone wants to, I mean, there's always that joke about, what's 10 dead lawyers at the bottom of the sea, a good day, or whatever that stupid joke is.
I've never heard that before. Okay.
Yeah, that's something about, there's all sorts of jokes. Yeah, there's all sorts of lawyers' jokes, lawyers being shitty. But I think for the most part, in the handful of court proceedings I've seen, I've liked most of the judges that I've seen, most of the prosecutors, defense attorneys. A lot of them are going above and beyond, especially some of the judges, literally trying to help people out, and misdemeanor courts or whatever.
Right.
They're trying to get them on the diversion path. They're like, hey, I understand you don't have the money to do this. Would you be willing to do community service? I don't want you to lose your license because, you've told me that if your license is suspended, you can't get to work, you can't get your kids to school. And courts are trying to work with people. If the person's willing to work with the court. If you come to there as a defendant and you're being a total dipshit and just railing against everything and talking back to the judge, just being super disrespectful, that judge is not inclined to help you at all. But judges and prosecutors and defense attorneys have leeway in sentencing. And be like, hey, you haven't had, a speeding ticket in 5 years and you just got caught doing 25 over, consider reckless driving. Let's see if the trooper of the state's willing to bump it down to 15, where it's only 2 points on your license, and you can go to defensive driving school or whatever.
Right.
Or I guess I'm seeing more good than I see just across the board shitty stuff.
But I see the premise of I 100% agree with there's shitty people in everything, and so I guess the idea being is that I agree with that sentiment and I look at it that way.
Right.
And, it's like you don't get respect, you earn respect. So I'm going to assume, for my own protection, that you're one of the shitty ones from whatever version of life this is. I'm not going to be shitty to you because of it, but I'm going to start with that as the premise. And I'm going to be defensive in my interactions with you because I don't want to, Like, I know that there are, like, okay, so for cops, for example, I'm not saying that all cops are bad, but there are bad ones. We agree. And so for my own safety, I'm going to come into a situation where I'm dealing with the police, assuming that that's one of the bad ones. Because if I assume that's one of the good ones and it ends up being one of the bad ones, it's going to be a lot harder for me to adjust to the situation to protect myself than if I start in the defensive mode. And so I think that's a way that that's a perspective issue. That's a perspective that I go at it with for my own safety, my own protection.
Right.
And
that's where kind of going to that situation can actually make the situation worse.
Right.
So I think I was just reading a story about that with some police interactions, especially with just in the past couple of years of everything going on.
Right.
Just heightened anxiety.
A lot more people don't like cops right now than used to.
No, I mean just general, not necessarily to do with cops, but yes, there is that same, to an extent, there is that suspicion of cops, with a lot of people just having general anxiety of COVID, inflation, everything just kind of going on, just everyone having stressful lives in general. But get pulled over by a cop, that cop's kind of nervous because he doesn't know what he's walking up to when he's pulled somebody over.
Right.
And at the same time, that person is maybe a heightened anxiety of all the things that have gone on with the police.
Right. Everything you're seeing in the news right now.
Shitty cops, doing shitty stuff.
Right. So it exacerbates the situation.
It's where you've basically got, two people going into an unknown situation, both with heightened tensions, essentially.
Right. But
that first interaction, when you get pulled over could totally set the tone for how the rest of that traffic stop's going to go.
Right. Right. I mean, I get that. I don't know. Again, it's like I have a hard time. Like, I get it, but it's hard for me to rationalize. And I guess this is a general empathy issue I have. I have a hard time rationalizing how people don't see what I see when we chalk up the things. And this transitions into probably our final topic, because I did want to talk about this, is the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping trial debacle. That from the early get-goes on it, I was like, this is bullshit. This is entrapment. This is all those kind of things, which I was right. But
how much did you read about it?
The premise being that, I understand the idea that I went into seeing that story with the perspective of, I assume that this is the bad ones, and the story ensues, and then the arguments that we had and other arguments on the show that we had as a group and all that kind of stuff over this topic shows a perspective thing. I was right parts.
We talked about this case.
We've talked about it before. I know I've said it on the show before that I think this was an entrapment kind of thing. And I'm surprised that two were acquitted and 2 were put in a hung jury or whatever, so they're eligible for retrial or whatever, which they might. I doubt they'll retry them. But, that essentially they got off on the charges more or less.
Yeah.
At least 2 of them have, and 2 of them are likely to not see another trial.
Probably not, yeah.
Because I would think that it'd be hard to get a jury to convict at this point with everything else that's happened since. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a fact. I know we've had the conversation in the sense of, in that this is one of the dirty cop things to me that has been going on, or goes on and continues to go on in the weird world that we live in. And I think it's disgusting. And I think I don't know how to stop it, but it needs to stop. I hate it. There was a bunch of versions of this with terrorists in the time span shortly after 9/11, when the Homeland Security and all that kind of shit started kicking in.
Yeah.
Where it's like you you just pick a random Joe off the street. I mean, not fully random. And again, I agree with you that there is some autonomy in the individual, and they do have some responsibility to not get caught up in a thing. But at the same time, it's like, dude was incapable in the first place. There was no way. It wasn't going to happen. So a couple dudes sitting around talking shit, turning into something because some third party comes in. I mean, it's just gross. I don't like that. I really don't like it. I think I'm pleased that this is the result of the trial, because a couple of losers who had no chance of doing anything productively useful in their life get wrapped up with some cops. I did see a thing that said about 20. There were about 20 agents of some agency or another that were part of the January 6th part. Either paid informants or actual staff agents that were undercover in some level or whatever.
No, please send me that, because I don't have anything about it. I did hear of the one guy that just found guilty. I think he was one of the first defendants to go on trial that tried to put Trump as the blame for why he was there.
Yeah, I saw that.
His lawyers were trying to subpoena like Trump and like a whole bunch of like high level people.
Good, it's fun.
Trying to like put them on the stand.
He told me to do it. I mean, so you still did it.
Yeah, that's what that was he and his lawyers. That was their defense. And I think Thursday or Friday was found guilty.
Yeah, I saw that headline as well. I do recall seeing that headline.
But I guess he was the first to actually that's going through trial to where that defense was actually used.
And there has been a handful of other trials that I've seen as well of some of the people that were much less anything, that were just kind of there. There were a lot of people that were arrested that were just there. Right. Not okay that they were there. They were trespassing or whatever. Right. But they were certainly
that's
not
where
part of...
Yeah, it's essentially misdemeanor charges of being unlawfully being in a building or whatever.
Right. I had seen a pretty decent handful of not...
Which I still don't see the defense on that. They're like, I don't know, I couldn't be there. Like, there was blockades around the entire building. I mean, it could be misconstrued because I think bike racks were used as essentially kind of like the fence around the building. Like, oh, it's just a bunch of bike racks. I didn't know it couldn't be there.
Oh, that was a funny story. Did you see this one?
No.
I don't know whose pepper spray it was, but there was pepper spray on a school bus that got discharged on the ride home from school one day. A bunch of kids.
That's just strong.
Got indirectly pepper sprayed. I'm assuming it was the bus driver. I think because like nowhere in the story they talk about it was a kid's. Because I think that would count. I would assume pepper spray goes under the zero tolerance policy as a weapon.
Yeah, I think it's considered a weapon.
I would assume that, but Tennessee unemployment is the lowest in the state's history at 3.2%. I'm trying to see. Oh, there is that story about the cop here that ended up killing somebody. Did you see that story? This KPD officer involved in some sort of chase, had his dash cam off and his body cam, and the dash cam turned itself back on at some point, and the person he was chasing ended up wrecking and dying or something.
I did see a story about that, but I didn't know what exact, because I thought it said that was the story of like a couple of years ago. Yeah, really. He turned off his body cam. He resigned. In the picture, you can see his eyes were all red. He'd always been crying before they took his mugshot.
Yeah, because I think he resigned and
I think he said like he wasn't a part of the chase at some point.
Yeah, because the crime. I think the crime is he's falsifying a police report or something like that. Which I'd have to find that story.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure what incident, because a lot of these incidents are things that have been gone through litigation in the past like year or two, and are just finally going through court or finally getting decided. So I wasn't really sure what exact chase or incident that his involvement was in that he disputed.
Right. There you go. There's the New York Times. Ohio man blamed Trump for storming the Capitol is found guilty. Starbucks is still freaking out because they're about to get unionized across the board. Did see what's the Georgia lady?
Stacey Abrams?
Yeah, she got in trouble for some campaign/income inconsistencies.
Hadn't heard about it.
Yeah, it's something about she's been doing speaking tours and all this different stuff, And it's interesting. I mean, I guess the reality is it's not so much. There are some concerns over some of the campaign stuff with it, but the real conversation I think is that is interesting is that like she's famous for losing an election essentially, and she goes on speaking tours and goes from I don't know what she was doing beforehand, but she was not making a ton of money to I think she
became a big political figure. I mean, it was
right. But I think the question at play here is that an individual never held office, not necessarily not any part of.
Are you sure? I don't know much about her history.
Not part of any, as far as not part of any executive part of any of the parties. Like she's not a party chair or anything like that. She's not a paid.
She had something before she ran for governor.
She's not a paid employee of any like party apparatus or anything like that.
So I don't think you just flat out run for governor with no experience whatsoever.
Constance is running
for governor.
Yeah, I spelled her name wrong, but Stacey Abrams on the wiki, or that's her website.
I mean, Wikipedia should tell you previous.
Yeah, but look, here's a headline: NBC News judge denies Abrams bid to seek unlimited contributions in Georgia's governor race.
I don't think cap the contributions as on the per individual basis or per I guess like a business can give.
Oh, she was
more than an individual can.
She was elected in the Georgia House of Reps.
Okay. And
was the minority leader of said Georgia House of Rep for a period of time.
Okay. So she made it pretty high up in the state legislature.
Right. But anyway, moral is that
so experience or no experience.
I mean, not a ton of experience. It's comparably to like she's okay. 4 years. No, she constituted 84th district and then 89th district. So no, she had 15 years in the state house. All right, I'll take it back. She's got experience. All right,
thank you.
A dozen years, maybe, give or take. But it's still kind of weird.
Did you say she was born in Madison? Yeah.
Yep.
She's a Wisconsinite.
Wisconsin.
Cheesehead.
Lives in Hotlanta. She's been a rep in Hotlanta since 2011. 2011 to 2017 as the minority leader of the Georgia House of Reps. And then a member from 2007. Excuse me.
That's a JD. Is that Juris Doctor? Does she have a law degree from Yale?
You're all over the map.
On the right side, education. Spielman College. She got her BA, MBA, MPA. MPA? Masters in
Public Administration?
Yeah, could be right.
Yeah.
I think JD is Juris Doctorate. That's like a law degree.
Yeah, I guess. Let's see. Juris Doctor.
Boom.
Doctor of Law or Doctor of Jurisprudence.
Yes. So not really a law degree, but you got your doctorate
in law.
In law, yeah.
She was appointed as Deputy City Attorney for the City of Atlanta at 29 in 2002. It doesn't really change the point I was trying to get to. The point I'm trying to get to is she's a...
You kind of started with she was unexperienced, and now we're like, oh.
State of a... So a public defender, or what did it just say?
Assistant district attorney or something like that.
She was appointed as a deputy city attorney, so it's an ADA for Atlanta, which is probably mid-hundreds, $200,000 a year job, high end. I'm assuming the Georgia House of Reps. I'm assuming you can't be an ADA. Oh, that's a good question.
That was 2002, yeah.
Do you think that you can be that you can hold a government job and run for a part-time government office? Do you think you could be like Ryswick is the superintendent of Knox County Schools? That is a full-time job. Do you think you could run for county commission with that job? Do you think there'd be a disqualification there?
I think it'd be a conflict of interest, yes.
Right. So I'm assuming that she could not. That she took a big pay cut when she left the DA's office.
I think I said that was 2002 that she was that.
Right. And so she got in the State House in 2007.
Okay.
And I'm assuming Georgia at best is similar to New Jersey or something like that in the 30s or 40s. So she took a significant pay cut, then ran for governor in 2018. All right, so there's a couple decades there, which I don't know, or a little over a decade there that she was, I don't know what she was doing for money. She's getting paid as a state rep, obviously, but is that her entirety of her income? The moral of the story that I heard on it was a breaking point story that she started at, during her gubernatorial run, her estimated net worth was like $60,000 or something like that. Or maybe it was a debt because she was still paying off student loans. I don't remember. It was plus or minus 60,000. Huh?
Right. Yeah, it wasn't cheap.
So let's say plus 60,000, but it might have been negative $60,000 or $80,000 because she had debt from school or whatever. But let's just say plus for conversation. But like as of last year, 2001 or whatever, she had like $6 million in general wealth. It's a big jump in 4 years for not working.
In her personal wealth?
Yeah. And so I guess the implication that is not necessarily ground in fact, but the implication is that she has parlayed her failed governor run and therefore political prowess into a pretty high-paying job of going on speaking tours and shit.
I mean, it wasn't a complete failure. I mean, it was
a close run.
It was down to like almost 50-50.
Right. Arguably, she did win, and there's been some conversation about whether there was some hanky-panky there. But it was a close run.
Yeah.
But more... anyway, it doesn't matter. Last 4 years...
Failed in losing, yeah.
Right. Last 4 years, failed to win the governor race, and went out to make a ton of fucking money in the next 4 years. And that's the curiosity at play. But my generally negative outlook on life sees as a problem. But that's my negative Nancyisms. Because as we discussed earlier, I perspective the worst possible scenario out of this, and that she's just...
Anybody in the spotlight going to be asked. I mean, I guess just even in that gubernatorial race, she made national headlines to where I'd say there were a lot of colleges that, asked her to come do a speaking tour.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, so colleges, which are generally not... I mean, they're well-funded institutions, but are generally not, like, regarded as... Generally speaking, at least major colleges, their athletic departments have more money than the actual school does, kind of deal. It's not like they have a huge sums of money to just throw around at guest speakers. So...
We have many speakers that come to UT all the time.
Sure, but do we drop $150,000 a session on these people?
Is that what you're alluding, that colleges paid her that much?
I believe I won't say colleges. I think it was. I think the one that was said in the story was it was a bank.
Okay.
It was like some bank's annual shareholders meeting.
All right. So that goes against your argument.
Not really.
Talking about school funding, and then you're like, oh, well, the story talked about a bank that gave her a bunch of money.
You were the one that referenced that people do these speaking tours at schools.
Right, I'm saying that, people do. Generally, I'd say she probably spoke at more schools than she spoke at banks.
What value do you think a bank gets for a $250,000 speaking fee from an individual? Like, do you think their staff gets super hyped up that Stacey Abrams came to talk to them? And they do...
Possibly, depending on the topic they asked her to come speak on.
They kick ass next year because they heard Stacey Abrams?
I doubt they paid her just to come there. And we're like, we don't care what you talk about. We're going to give you $150,000 just to come talk to my people.
I mean...
They probably asked her to talk about a certain subject.
The skeptic in me is like, they don't care what she talks about. They just want to pay her $150,000. And that's the way they can do it.
There's that possibility, yes.
That's the negative Nancy in me. That's all I'm saying. I don't know how we got on that. How I was going to gloat about my correctness on the entrapment scheme for the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping, but
I don't know. I mean, from what I read, I didn't see as much entrapment.
But I mean, they were found not guilty, at least a couple of them. So how is it not? I mean, what else could it be? They just planned and attempted to execute a crime that they. I mean, or they didn't. Like, how do you?
They were talking about kidnapping the governor before the FBI ever got involved in it.
Okay, but I mean, how do you make a?
So I mean, entrapment is in.
How do you make? Okay, so how do you?
The FBI gave them the idea and gave them the means and everything that they entrapped them into it.
How do you make how do you what is required for it to be a conspiracy to commit kidnapping charge? The state would have to bring evidence.
Planned and had the means, maybe
right?
Not necessarily just planning. I mean, I think that would be borderline conspiracy if you were making plans to.
Right.
They don't necessarily have the means.
I think means is necessary for the case as well. I think because again, I make the joke all the time. If we sat here in the basement and had a conversation planning the way we would kidnap Sarah Palin in Alaska, even going so far as to like writing up and drawing plans and how much plane tickets would cost and stuff like that, but don't have the money, we can't do anything. We don't have the money to get the plane tickets to go up there. You know what I'm saying?
So you didn't conspire to actually do it just because you didn't have the money.
Because you're incapable
to do
it.
You're,
the capability, I think, is part of the charge. Like if you were incapable of doing it, like I mean, okay.
So if I conspired to kill someone by a gun, but I didn't have a handgun, but I didn't conspire to actually kill the person just because I didn't have a gun to actually make that come to fruition. Right. Make me not guilty.
I mean, you conspired, but you didn't conspire to commit because you didn't have the means. I mean, I don't know what the technical terminology at play here is.
I'm sure there's weird.
I think if you're
legal standards.
I think if you don't have the capability of doing anything, and if you don't have the capability of committing the crime due to some means issue, whether it's access to funding or access to the equipment needed to do the job or whatever that is, and you don't have that access or have access to someone who does, then no, you can't. I mean, you can't. I don't think the conspiracy. I'm assuming that's
what the case came down to. But they scoped out her house.
They tried to and failed. The FBI scoped out her house. That's the story, as I understand it. Is they all went out as a group to some lake house area, and all the footage that actually showed her house was made by FBI agents.
I didn't read that part.
So they made it into the neighborhood, but they couldn't figure out. They didn't know which house was hers. The actual defendants in the case didn't know which house was actually hers, or couldn't figure out how to find her house. The agents did, but they didn't.
No, I didn't read that part of it.
Okay, but anywho, I don't think it should be a crime for talking shit. But I agree that they went past talking shit on some levels. So, I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird ism.
On some levels. They were complacent and they were just really high. Just talking about kidnapping and, dragging her head down the... Oh, no, sorry. That was something else.
Again, but... no, I mean, again, talking shit. And the only thing that makes it go past talking shit is the police, then yeah, it's entrapment. And yes, I agree that there is some agency to the fact that you go past talking shit. I agree with that fully.
I know they had, tapes. I didn't hear any of the tapes. I don't know what all discussions were made on the tapes.
Like I said, I don't think it's a crime to have a conversation. I think it's a crime to make actions to do so. I think that's where the line is drawn. And I don't think
it would have been a hung jury if there wasn't evidence against them.
Okay.
I think if it was complete entrapment and there was no evidence against them, it would have been complete annulment.
Okay. I don't know. I don't get it.
I mean, am I wrong to think that?
I don't know. It said some person, 1 to 11 people, believe the state, believe the prosecution 100%. I don't know if that means that there was evidence there. That just means there's somebody who trusts the state.
That's what you decide upon is the evidence. I just like their argument. If they're doing their job properly,
right? And the guy
that's going off the actual evidence as it's produced,
right? And I believe whatever the state says is true. So whichever guy was speaking for the state or speaking on behalf of the state that said this and this and this, I believe he's telling the truth, which makes that fact to me, and I refuse to come off of that stance.
I don't think the defense had any evidence outside of what the prosecution had put in. The prosecution put in and linked some of those FBI
Okay, but my point is that, and it could go both ways, to be fair. It could go both ways. It could be that there was one person of the 12 who hates the state and refuses to believe anything the state has to say. And so even though there's a mountain of evidence that says 100% that this is what happened, I don't care because the state said so.
It smells like entrapment.
Right. It could go either way. We don't know that either right now. But I'm saying like that person exists on both sides of the conversation. That one person that believes everything or believes nothing could be the one that changed the outcome of this case. And that doesn't prove entrapment or disprove entrapment. That just proves that there's one person that either believes everything or believes nothing. Yeah. So I don't know that.
I don't think I don't know if they've released any kind of breakdown.
I said, I think if you're not protecting anybody by as an agency that is supposedly tasked with protection of the public, you're not protecting anybody by enabling them to commit a crime. That is the premise that I see the problem with. You're not protecting, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, yes, you're protecting Gretchen Whitmer because you never let them get to the point of kidnapping her. But had you not started helping them, they couldn't have gotten to that point either.
That's fucking speculation.
Okay, but you could.
How do you know they would have never gotten to that point?
Your undercover guy could have stayed there with him the whole time and not been anything other than just a fly on the wall and following along until it got to that point, and then you step in and stop them because that's when the crime's about to actually happen.
I don't know what the FBI was alluded to have helped them do. Like, oh, we'll rent vans for you. You don't have a car? Okay, we'll rent a car for you.
There's some of that. I know there's plane tickets involved at some point, and that was from one of the FBI guys. Anyway, it doesn't. I don't know why we need to get the whole breakdown of exactly what happened or accounting. Once the trial transcripts start coming out, we'll go through it that way because it's not again. My point is this is not a unique tactic. This isn't a new thing. This isn't the first time these tactics have been used. And that's the problem that I have with it. Because I don't think, sure, have an undercover agent and have them follow these guys around because they're talking and it sounds pretty serious about what they're trying to do. At some point, if you're good at your job, you're going to be following these guys around and realize these guys couldn't hurt shit. This guy just sits in his basement stoned all day and talks shit online. He only leaves his house to buy weed and food. This guy's not doing anything. Why am I following this guy around? And then the thing doesn't happen because it can't happen because this guy's too fucking lazy for it to happen. But instead, it's like, hey man, come on, let's go. I'll give you a ride over there. Whatever it is. The end's the same, right? Gretchen Whitmer doesn't get kidnapped. Because you're keeping an eye on them and seeing if they're actually going to do anything, but you're not helping them along the way so that they get to the point of being able to do something so that then you get to the point where you can actually stop them from doing it. Well, they wouldn't have done it anyway. They couldn't. They were incapable. I can't remember the kid's name, but it's some kid, New York area, post 9/11, Middle Eastern kid. Apparently, it was trolling around Twitter or something like that, and liked some kind of ISIS-friendly shit. And so, some guy worked for the CIA, undercover, DMs him, starts talking to him. Starts telling him about all the terrible shit the U.S. has done to his family and this history and this kind of shit. And it goes from a mildly curious kid to a radicalized kid from the most part of it through the CIA or FBI or whichever agency was part of this thing. To which they encouraged him to buy a plane ticket to like Syria or something like that. And I'm not exactly sure what the legal thing was, but essentially this attempt to leave the country to go to Syria was the crime, and they arrested him on the way to the airport.
So I think I remember hearing a attempted entrapment to where I think there was like an agent that approached somebody that they thought may have connections. And the guy was basically just like a middleman. Like, hey, you like radical people? It's like, no, I don't know. Like that guy over there seems kind of sketchy, so maybe him. Or it was kind of that weird thing.
Right.
I guess he kind of like made the connection between the two. So I guess they tried to get him for contributing or...
Right. Accessory
being entrapment when they were like, hey, do you guys know any terrorists? And like, no, not personally, but that guy kind of worries me.
That kind of freaks me out. That's fucked up, actually. That's really fucked up.
I'm not sure if I'm relaying it
correctly
specifically, but I thought it was somewhere along those lines where it was somebody that, where there was an entrapment in it to where they were basically like encouraging this guy to like find bombs or whatever. And he's like, well, I don't know, but like this guy knows something crazy.
Right. But having known it and not reported it prior, that's some sort of criminality or something like that.
Possibly, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you knew the guy. You must be part of it. Right? Anyway. So I've got Sarah something or other. She's running for one of the judge seats coming in Monday. I apologize. I haven't been able to get a lot of interviews trying to get the Compass thing started. And we're still recovering BS from work. I've just been busier than normal the last couple weeks. I'll try to get a few more in. I'm certainly going to try to get my District 18 race covered in the state level one, but we got all summer for that. But
made it through a good chunk of them.
Yeah. Got hot and heavy early. I mean, and like right now, like this last week and this week are going to be harder weeks to get filled because this first round of early voting. I mean, the whole time in early voting, they're out there. A lot of them like to be out outside the 100-foot circle or whatever at the polling places and trying to catch people on the way into voting. But outside the 100-foot campaigning limit. Apparently, New Harvest Park or whatever is one of the early voting places. And Mayor Jacobs was there for some ribbon cutting ceremony about something different, but it was in the building.
Ooh.
And so he was technically within the 100 feet.
Right.
But the way it's written is you can't campaign within 100 feet of a polling station.
Right.
And he wasn't campaigning. He was doing his job as a ribbon cutting master of ceremonies or whatever. But somebody was complaining about online. It's like, I understand that you don't like the mayor and any excuse to give him shit you're going to try to give, but we can do better.
I would like to think if I was the mayor at the time, I would be like, let's do that tomorrow. Well, no, I guess
right.
The early election still would have been going on.
Yeah. It's like, this is a county park that we're doing a grand opening event for this county park. We're going to do the event. There's no way of avoiding it. And again, he just has to be careful to not go, hey, don't forget to vote for me. And he's not even in the primary because he's running unopposed.
Right.
So it's not like he could, I guess he could theoretically be anti-campaigning for who he, on the other side but
don't you do a write-in. Don't you do a write-in.
Right. Or do, don't vote for that one because that one might beat me,
Yeah.
So anyway, all right, let's call anything.
Yeah.
Almost agreement, bitches. Happy Easter, or whatever random spring holiday you like to celebrate this weekend, like the rest of us are doing other stuff. The Compass show is up. Check them out. Compass Points, any of your major podcast providers, same place you find us. You can find them as Compass Points Podcast with Scott and Jesse. We're Almost Agreement at gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, on YouTube. Go to our website, almostagreement.com. That's where all the fun stuff's at. My voter guide is up and running. I'm still filling stuff out because there's too many damn people. Go check that out. It's got links to the Election Commission. Get your early voting locations. I think registration, you can't register anymore, but you can at least find out where you're registered if you are. Polling locations, what districts you actually get to vote for, that kind of stuff. I personally am pulling a Republican primary because that is the most effective use of my votes, so I'm going to do it that way. I'm not going to tell anybody else what to do with their lives, but we have open primaries, so yeah. Almost in Agreement. We'll be back next week with another show. Like I said, I got an interview this week. Compass has got another show coming up this week, so busy doing busy stuff. Have a great day, and we appreciate y'all. And again, happy Sunday, Easter Day thing.